You're listening to the Just Go Bike podcast. We're all about the culture of bicycling just for the fun of it. Your host, Kathy Murphy from the Morphology Podcast and Andrea Parrott from Parrott Talk are joined by a wide variety of guests each week that delve into the social side of cycling. With tales from RAGBRAI Nation, come for the bikes, stay for the fun, and leave with a smile. And now, here are your hosts, Murph.
Hey, that's me.
And AP.
And that's me.
Well, hey there, AP.
Hi, Murph.
Here we are in the, what do we call it? Parrott Talk Studios together.
You better believe we're in Parrott Talk Studios, and this is the new and improved version.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. And I always wonder if, when we can actually look at each other, if we're like nailing it even more so than we normally do.
Yeah, I would like to think that we do a pretty good job remotely when we record, but there's just a little something special about being in the room together. So
definitely. And we're in the room together because, we have a pretty big week ahead of us. I think we've talked about it several episodes, but the Great Iowa Fall Ride is coming up.
Yeah, and wouldn't you know it, I have been training for it because there was a period of time where I hadn't biked for a while.
What?
Well, because I was getting ready for RAGBRAI and I was trying to help other people enjoy themselves on bikes. So I wanted to be sure that, I had to get my job done. So now I've been back on the bike and enjoying the trails of Des Moines. And I'll tell you, it is going to be perfect for the fall ride.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
And of course, I've been doing a little bit of biking here and there as well.
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to this ride. And then I think it's a couple weeks after I head to Ohio to ride across that state. So,
oh my gosh, exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. And we already spoke about this, but we're both bringing our steel bikes, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And we're going to have to figure out our outfits because we should be matchy-match because
That's right.
In case listeners are out there coming to do the Great Iowa Fall Ride that have not met us yet, we want to meet you.
I think we'll be pretty easily identifiable. For the giggling alone, if nothing else.
That's true, yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to be riding my steel bike. I went and took it to the bike shop on purpose to get it like totally tuned up. So we're ready to go. I just had to put my burrito tote back on the front of it.
What's a burrito tote?
It's what I use for a bike bag, but it's actually made to hold and insulate a burrito. So you could pick a burrito up and take it home and it'll still be piping hot when you get back. But it also has a little compartment for salsa. So if you wanted to have.
Only Andrea Parrott would have a burrito tote.
And I will say I more often put beer or Gatorade in the front of it. But
oh, sure. If it's insulated. Yeah, that's a great idea.
It keeps it nice and cold. So,
oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, you can take a little tour of it if you come find me on the fall ride.
Well, this is risky for us to share this, but in a couple hours, we are going to be on a different type of show. Dare we say it before it's actually happened?
I think we should go ahead and say it. I'm pretty darn excited.
Yeah. So we are going to be interviewed on an episode. I don't even remember the name of it to be exact, but it's Idaho Public Radio, which cracks me up because we're Iowans. They're Idahoans. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, Idahoans.
So we're going to be on there to talk a little bit about RAGBRAI and about biking in Iowa, and pretty darn excited. One of the hosts, Peter, he's actually from Iowa, and he did RAGBRAI. So I think if it works out right, we should maybe record it, or we'll do a recap of it for sure next week.
Yeah, exciting. It's called Nature of Idaho radio program. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'm so excited. What an honor to be asked to be on the airwaves.
Yeah. I did, in a joke, send a message to Peter, the man that we're going to be speaking with, and said, I hope we don't have to have a debate on what's better, potatoes or corn. And you know what his answer was? He's like, well, I do have a ear of corn tattooed on my arm, so he would probably be on our side.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you listeners who don't know, I mean, not just corn and potatoes, but Idaho is frequently mistaken for Iowa.
Yeah.
People ask me if I'm from Idaho all the time.
Yeah.
And Ohio as well, for whatever reason. And now we've mentioned all three in this one episode. So I'll tell you, once you come to Iowa, you won't mistake it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So we're just going to stay talking live together because this episode's pretty fun. Paul Wade, do you remember meeting Paul Wade? He always comes to our booth.
Yeah.
And he has been on the podcast a couple times, Paul as well as Todd Cowan.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said that right. Cowan, yes. And they are from Team RWB, which is Team Red, White, and Blue. They're veterans. They have a great bike team. And Paul and Todd are like the leaders. Like they also have a how to pack for RAGBRAI video.
Yeah.
Theirs is like, I think theirs is like 20 minutes long, and it's actually pretty darn funny and informational.
Yeah.
Anyway, Paul sent a message to us. So here you go, Paul. We are going to talk about your topic. And he said when he is working with some of the newbies in their group, the topic of timelines always comes up, like timelines about, when do you start each day? How do you figure out when to start training? What do you do with charters? And so you and I were like, let's make an episode out of it, because a lot of those answers are not very specific. Like they could be vague, especially at the time of this recording. So thank you, Paul, for writing in and asking us to do this. And I think we should get into it.
Yeah. And just to kind of kick things off. Well, first of all, thanks, Paul. You're awesome. Can't wait to see you next RAGBRAI.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, this week we'll be together not once, but not twice, but thrice to do three different things.
That's right.
Yeah. So we have this podcast recording that we're doing together. And then later this week, we will be reunited again because we are having the Iowa, what we call the Cycling Division Summit, where everyone from the RAGBRAI team comes in and we game plan for the rest of the year. And what do we want to do? How do we want to make RAGBRAI 52 bigger and better than 51? Which, it went really well. But there's always stuff that we want to add or we want to try, or maybe there's something specific we want to do because of I don't know, like an annual event, like way back when we had the bicentennial, or like, I don't know, there's a huge list of things that we could be changing, or, it's a big event. Sometimes stuff doesn't go quite right, or maybe we want to just see if something would be better. Anyway, I'll be planning out my social media calendar. We're going to talk about what we're going to do with the podcast for the rest of the year. So all sorts of stuff is going to be decided at the summit, or decided that we're going to make a plan for it. So either one of the two. And then we're just going to have a fun time together. And then after that, we will have at Friday at 5 p.m., we're going to have an open house for the Great Iowa Fall Ride, where you can come and you can have a beverage. You can look at the stuff we have for sale, because we're having a giant garage sale.
And giant is an understatement, because I walked through it on my way to this podcast studio.
Yeah. So, and now I'm kind of run on about the same topic, but like the garage sale is really, really cool. And I really encourage you to, if you listen to this in time, to stop by. It's Friday the 13th of September, but you will actually be lucky because our prices are insane on a lot of this stuff.
Awesome.
So, and then the next day on Saturday, we have the fall ride, which we've already covered.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And then we have Sunday.
The third time we'll be together is on Sunday, where we'll both drive to Cedar Rapids, and we're going to be at the Iowa Podcast Awards.
Yes. And we are up for the People's Choice Award,
That's
which
right.
hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you have taken the time to go to iowapodcastawards.com, I believe, and vote for us.
Yeah. Well, if at the time of posting this podcast, you'll have about 6 hours to vote. So I don't know. It might be too late, but
oh man. Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who has already voted for us. And if we win, amazing. If not, hey, whatever. It's just a fun thing to be a part of.
Yes. We're happy that we were nominated. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we have a couple other awards we're up for as well. So we'll be going to our awards ceremony and just sort of like rubbing elbows with a bunch of other podcast hosts from Iowa, which is always a cool thing because, podcasting is kind of like cycling in that everyone does it a little bit different.
Right.
And you can learn a lot from other people.
And I learned, through this process that there are a lot of podcasts that are Iowa focused or Iowa related or actually recorded in Iowa. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's been fun to kind of just be a part of that. Thanks to Logan and the Iowa Podcast Awards in advance for just letting us be a part of it. And of course we recorded an episode there.
Yeah.
I don't know, long time ago, maybe even a whole year ago now, where we went there with the Confused Breakfast podcast at the Iowa Podcast Awards. I don't know if that's what their company name is called. It's not. But the same studio. We went to Logan's studio and recorded there. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into this whole timeline focus.
Yeah.
The first thing that I think would be interesting to learn, because I know it's coming right up, would be when you guys decide the logo.
Yeah. I happen to know that the logo is already done.
Wait, can we hear it right here?
The middle of September. Absolutely not, because I will tell you, I don't know what it is. I know it's done.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it has not been revealed to me. That's part of the summit. We'll find out.
Okay.
But with the logo, we'll start planning the release of the logo and everything like that. We have a baby plan that we're going to bring into like a full adult plan here next week. But it's always released at the end of October.
Okay.
Just to kind of get some hype going, and we're going to have some merch with it, and like it's going to be pretty exciting. I've heard it's pretty good.
I think every year it is pretty good.
I know. I think that
it'll be it'll be fun to see the logo. And you're right, it does create a little bit of hype.
Yeah.
I know there's more than just me that thinks about RAGBRAI all year round.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
for sure that's true.
Yeah.
So to see the logo is like, oh my gosh, now I'm starting to think about what am I going to do, which also is another reason why we're doing this podcast, because
Yeah.
I see the logo, then I'm like, gosh, when do I register, and when do I should I do a charter this year, and when do I train? So
Yeah.
anyway,
We'll get to that.
okay.
Yeah. So the logo launch is always just, for us, it's when the calendar year starts. So in October, at the end of October, it will become 2025 for the RAGBRAI staff, and all
okay.
systems are go forward till July. Everything points to then. I start dating my checks. If I was someone who still wrote checks, it would be 10/31/2025 starting then. So yeah, I guess I don't write checks anymore. But anyway, so the logo launch will kind of precede the registration opening.
Okay.
Yeah.
So registration opens, and if I understand or remember this correctly, you don't have to, but there are people that register before they actually know the route. Is that
Sure.
true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, some people know that they want to do it either because it's a bucket list item that they are planning on checking off, or because they ride RAGBRAI every year, or I don't know. There's 100 reasons why people would want to register early, but you can. And registration opens on November 15th every year.
Wow. Okay.
Things may be a little bit different this year because we are switching registration platforms from one to another.
Mm-hmm.
So stay tuned for information about that. But it's generally November 15th.
Got it.
That time period. And then don't worry about us switching platforms. Please do not panic. We have a whole team working on making sure that the transition is as smooth as possible. And we'll be there for you if you have questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Anytime. If you are someone who hasn't listened to this podcast for a long time or for very long, you'll maybe be surprised to find out that if you message the RAGBRAI Facebook page, yours truly will answer your question. So it's all me, baby. So don't be shy to reach out.
And let me qualify, that is the official ragbrai.com website.
That's
or
right.
Facebook page. If it's the RAGBRAI newbies or the Facebook page that says RAGBRAI and the dates, those are fan pages. So
That's right.
The only time Andrea AP is going to see those is if she's just randomly scrolling through.
That's right. Yeah, I don't see any of the fan pages. Those are run independently by third parties.
Yeah.
And we love them for that. But
Yes, for sure.
the facebook.com/RAGBRAI is the page that I manage, or same on Instagram. So, and the Just Go Bike page, you can reach out there too.
Oh, yeah.
Although I check that a little bit less frequently just because, although maybe I should, I don't know. Anyway, so you feel free to reach out with questions. So then we have registration launch, and that's when that's sort of game on at that point.
Yeah, I register usually the first day.
Yep.
Not because of any other reason, but because I know I'm going to do it no matter what.
Yeah. Yep. And over time, we've stepped away from the lottery system. So you don't have to worry about am I going to get selected or not? That's not an issue anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, you don't need to worry about us selling out.
Mm-hmm.
As we get through the year, there will be people whose plans change, and you could always purchase a band from them,
Mm-hmm.
or you could always buy day passes. We always have those available. Don't worry about us selling out down the road.
But I will say that as we get closer to the actual RAGBRAI, the prices probably go up.
Oh,
Which, of course, any event does that, because that's when you have to spend more money because, now another 2,000 people registered. We need to get more porta potties or more, whatever.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. The prices do increase every couple months as we get closer to the registration deadline in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And you are also right about why it happens. We have to plan for you.
Mm-hmm.
We want to plan for you. We get to plan for you. But we need to know how many porta potties to have and how many RV parking spaces we're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes more difficult as we get closer to the ride because it's a quick turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
So if you register earlier, you're rewarded for that because we want to know you're coming and we want to prepare for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we got the logo. We got the registration.
Yep.
Matt, I'm assuming has been working hard on figuring out the route for next year. I think the next thing that comes up is the actual route is announced.
That's right. Yeah. I think he's got a pretty good handle on the route. Not that I have any idea about that, but when I ask him about it, he gets that cagey look on his face, like he's got a secret in there. But I know he's been working on it. Whether or not it's finalized, who knows? But we announced the route the last Saturday in January at the route announcement party. And it's usually here in Des Moines. We're not at our RAGBRAI HQ, but in a big venue near here. And that's when, for the rest of the world, the RAGBRAI year sort of kicks off.
Yeah.
So we'll have, obviously the route will be announced. There's a giant Iowa Bike Expo during the day before the announcement. So it's a whole like celebratory weekend where we announce the route. And when I say we announce the route, we're only announcing the overnight towns at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've had several episodes on why we don't have all the pass-through towns at that point. But I think the high-level answer is Matt is still working through logistics and with DOT at that time. But he does nail down the overnight towns.
Yeah. And I guess with that, we announce the pass-through towns and the meeting towns, like all the towns that fill in the middle, usually around the Ides of March. So the middle of March, sometime in there. It just sort of depends on planning when exactly, but then we announced the towns. Now you notice I didn't say we announced the roads because we developed that a little bit further just to make sure that everything is safe and that there aren't construction projects and things like that. And those routes and the GPS files that go with them, because we want you to make sure that you have a GPS file if you're someone who likes that. Those are released after the route announcement in June, or I'm sorry, the route inspection in June. And I know we're going to get to that.
Yes. So there's all kinds of different timelines here.
I know.
Which brings me to the next question that we know inside and out, but maybe not everybody knows. Does RAGBRAI happen the same time each year?
Oh, it sure does. Great question. In fact, I was able, during the last day of RAGBRAI 51 in 2024, I changed all of our social to say next year's RAGBRAI dates.
Oh.
Because it's always the last full week of July.
Yeah.
It never changes. It was only different the first maybe one or maybe two RAGBRAIs, and then they changed it. And it's been this way ever for 50 years since then. So you can always count it the last full week. So that means Saturday to Saturday. So if you start on a Saturday and it changes to August, too late.
Yep. So we will never, at least history will tell us, we don't ride our bikes as part of RAGBRAI in August.
Correct. Yep. So you can always count on that. We'll always start in the Missouri River somewhere the Saturday prior, and we'll always end in the Mississippi, and then we'll find out where exactly later.
So now is the time to get that vacation, request into whatever, the corporate area, the HR, and so you can be ready.
Back when I was a civilian, I would put in my vacation request on January 1st every year.
Really?
Well, because there are other people at my jobs that would like to ride RAGBRAI, but I must ride RAGBRAI.
Yes, which is my attitude as well.
Yeah, so.
Okay, this is an interesting question, which will not have a firm answer, but so now let's say January has come and gone. Everybody knows the route. Next question, when do charters open?
Well, okay, good question. First of all, you can find out about all the charters that we recommend as RAGBRAI on ragbrai.com. If you look under the little tab that says the ride, there's a button that says charters, and you can click that and you can see none of the charters are run by RAGBRAI. They're all third parties, but we have certain ones that we recommend because they've been long-standing, they've done really good things for the riders, they're a good deal, or any variety of things that make us recommend them.
And there's a lot of them, a lot of them to choose from. And I think this would be a good time if you're like, I don't know which charter to pick. That's where you could go to that fan page, the RAGBRAI with the date on it, and just ask, what charters do you guys like? And I bet you that you'll get all kinds of answers.
Yeah. And you could ask that in RAGBRAI newbies too, either way.
Sure.
But they're all just a little bit different. But they're all really awesome. I would recommend them for a first-time rider because they do provide that sense of community that you might not know. Before you come on RAGBRAI, you might not know that you'll be able to make friends pretty easily on RAGBRAI, which you will. You'll be able to make friends easily. But with a charter, they're built in. So they're just sort of a part of it. And sometimes some of them have a little bit more of the nicer things in life,
Oh,
like
geez,
tent
yes.
setup or
Coffee
like,
in the morning.
yeah, stuff like that, that some of the extras that you may be looking for. So this is a nice time to browse a charter. But to answer your question, they all open up at different times because they are all third parties. So I would go onto the RAGBRAI site and look, and if there's one you're interested in, reach out to them.
Yep. And one note, when you register for RAGBRAI, you're registering to camp and to have your luggage transferred via the RAGBRAI semis. That's part of your registration. So if you were to do a charter, that's an extra charge. Like you said, AP, it's a third party. It's not required to do RAGBRAI. It's if you want a little bit more VIP action.
That's right. Yeah. So absolutely right. Yeah, it's a really great way. When I was a civilian, I rode with one of them. I won't say which because I don't want to recommend any above the others. I think I have said on this podcast before, or you can always ask me. But yeah, it's just kind of nice. It was a really great way for our family to all ride and camp and relax together after the ride. Yeah.
Okay, next question. This is also going to be an interesting answer. When do I try to find a team? And I definitely heard this a lot or read it a lot in our emails where first timers are like, I want to join a team and I don't know how, or how do I go about that? So what's your opinion on that?
Well, you can find a team anytime you like.
Yes.
But teams are not organized as much on the whole as charters are. It's more of like a group of friends or a group of people who have always ridden RAGBRAI together. Now, some of them are approaching charter status. They're very much more serious. I think there's the Lake County Cyclist is an example of that, or like say, I don't know. There's all sorts of different teams, or maybe I would call them a club, more than that. So you could look around, go to your local bike shop and ask them if you have a RAGBRAI team in the area that you might be able to join. That'd be one way to do it.
I also think let's just say that you were in the Air Force at one point in your life. There is the Air Force cycling team. You could reach out to them and find out if they're accepting new team members. Or like we mentioned, Paul, who wrote in about this, he's with Team RWB, which is Red, White, and Blue. You could Google that and find out if they're accepting new members and if there are requirements to be part of the team.
Yeah. And I would say beyond that, go on a bike ride in your neighborhood and stop at, say, a bar or restaurant with other bikers there and just start asking around. I will guarantee you will not be able to get these people to stop talking about their team once you get started. And I mean that in a good way.
And one of our, the gals in our Rider Recap episodes, like she literally came to RAGBRAI by herself. I'm sure you've listened to this already, but came to RAGBRAI by herself, was late dropping off her luggage, and then just like walked up to a group and was like, can you guys take my luggage to the next town? And now she's already planning to ride with them again next year.
Yeah.
So it was a cool story.
I mean, that's one of the best things about RAGBRAI is how friendly people are and how accepting people are. And it's really easier than you might think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I will give my own 2 cents on that. I don't ride with the team anymore, although I still identify as a Team Stiff member. Go Team Stiff. And I typically ride by myself. But yet I'm not by myself because you're surrounded by thousands of people. And since I've been doing RAGBRAI for so long, almost every town I go into, I will just randomly run into somebody who I've biked with before, or I know, or somehow you and I end up in the lunch town almost every day.
Yep.
At the same time. I know that we probably just know each other's schedule, but
I mean, and I'm traveling by car, so technically I don't know where Murph is.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be on a team to do RAGBRAI, and you will still have the time of your life.
Yeah, but it is a question we get asked a lot just because people don't necessarily know. It's not like Mean Girls. It's not like people are really going to exclude you. And if they do, that's not a team you want to be a part of. There's plenty of other ones.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Okay. Popular question that starts showing up in the end of June. When will my wristband arrive?
Ooh. Question for the ages. The answer is as soon as possible.
Yes.
We ship out wristbands starting once registration closes, and that does vary a little bit year to year. But we ship out wristbands and they should go to you, straight to you, unless you register as a part of a team. And in that case, the wristbands will go to your team captain. Again, we're messing with the registration system again this year. So I'm not exactly sure what the deadlines are going to be. So just stay tuned to this podcast and we'll fill you in. Generally, every single wristband is sent out by the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
I think we may end up keeping registration open a little bit longer this year in 2025. But if that's the case, we'll send it out as soon as you register.
And so let's just say I am biking from Canada to the start of RAGBRAI and I leave July 1st and my wristband has not arrived. Am I just out? Am I not going to be able to do RAGBRAI?
No, first of all, if you live in Canada, we will hold your wristband for pickup.
Oh, perfect.
At the expo and wherever our start town is. All international riders will hold your wristband for you.
Okay.
But if something happens and there's a problem with your wristband, just stop by and see us and we can reissue you a wristband because we'll be able to look you up in the system and know that you've registered.
Yes,
and
perfect.
Get you from there.
Okay.
So, and I want to apologize to Erica if I've messed up on any registration details. We're going to have her on the podcast.
Yeah, we always have her on. Yeah.
She's going to correct the record. I think I'm generally right, but you'll want to pay attention to our social and to Erica's episode of the podcast and to our website where we'll post the real information.
Okay. But the moral of that story is don't panic.
Don't panic.
Yeah, everything will be fine.
The one thing I will say that is if there is an issue and you need to come pick it up from the expo, from the registration booth at the expo, make sure you come pretty early because you're going to want to receive that wristband and then go put it on your luggage and then figure out where the luggage truck is and blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Please don't wait until it's dark out to do this because it'll be so much more difficult.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
So,
okay. Another big question that comes in is vehicle parking. And I think that this one is, we're going to have a vague answer for obvious reasons, but go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm in the hot seat.
Oh.
Well, vehicle parking of all different kinds is a topic that we want to pay real close attention to because people need to have a way to get across the state by car as well as by bike. When you register, you'll be able to purchase a vehicle pass for your any different style of vehicle, be that an RV or a trailer or a car or a truck or what have you. And then also a non-rider pass for your driver. So you'll be able to get that way. Along with that, people want to know, I think they want to know about where the homestays where we match you up with a resident where you can park in their driveway or camp in their backyard or in some cases even camp inside their house, just depending on what you have asked for. And that is arranged all by the overnight towns. So obviously we need to wait, first of all, to find out what the overnight towns are.
Right.
But then secondly, they develop a program where it's kind of like when you go into the dorms for college and they'll match you with someone who is appropriate for whatever reason. And so we'll do that. Usually it's around April-ish when that goes out. So you got a couple months to wait until you'll be able to figure out who your host home is.
Yeah. Well, and plus, if these communities aren't finding out that they're a host town until the end of January, then they've got to get their committees set up and they've got to get focused. And then they have to reach out to their community to say, hey, do you want to host a family or do you want to have somebody camp in your backyard? So there's a long process on their end before it comes to the RAGBRAI riders.
But they are thinking about you. It's part of our program that we have for them. So they'll be getting it ready. I wouldn't worry about it. They're usually pretty good about matching people. You don't have to do a home stay. You can park. We have an RV campground. We have a quiet campground where generators aren't allowed. We have all sorts of different camping options. So I wouldn't worry about getting a host home unless that's something that you think that will be right for you.
Okay. Yeah. And then along with that, most people, if they're not on a charter, they are either parking their car at the end of RAGBRAI so then they can go on home, or they're parking their car at the beginning of RAGBRAI and getting a charter back to back and forth. There's multiple ways to do parking. And that's another thing that we just can't say right now what's going to happen because there's so many moving parts.
What I will say is that there's always long-term parking, both, like you said, in the start town and the end town. And you'll be able to get information on that. Again, in the spring, the towns will have that page ready. And I make a big deal about it on our social when it happens. So you'll be able to see it if you follow us. And we'll mention it on the podcast, I'm sure. But again, like you said, it's all sorts of different coordination with the towns. So you'll buy your parking spot from the town, and then you will arrange for transportation either to the start or the end, depending on which one makes sense. But you'll do that either by purchasing a shuttle pass from a charter, or maybe you have a friend who's willing to drive you or a team. That's another benefit of having a team or a club is maybe you don't have to deal with that. But you'll need to be in charge of dealing with that. And I would do it sooner than later in the spring. So that's how I would manage that. It's vehicle parking in the overnight town, like in the end and start towns, is a nice way for those towns to make a little bit of money, to go back towards their operations cost, because riders don't, especially the end town riders are ready to go home and they take off and they don't spend as much money. So it's a nice way for them to sort of recoup some of their costs.
Okay. So this next question, you briefly mentioned it, pre-ride or the inspection ride. Will you tell listeners when that happens?
The RAGBRAI route inspection ride is invite only, and it is always the first full week of June.
Yes. And why is it so many weeks before RAGBRAI?
It is always it's approximately 50 days before RAGBRAI, and it's just a really nice opportunity for us to come and meet the towns. And it strikes that nice balance between the towns have a lot of their plans in place, so we can share it with the world by the podcast, by our website, by the social media, those plans, to make sure that the riders are prepared for their vacation coming up. But also, if there's anything that needs to be changed or if they have any questions, they have plenty of time to fix that or update that or plan that. So it strikes a nice balance.
And then it's kind of Matt's last time to explore the route, usually, on bike instead of in his truck, to make those last minute changes. Like if there's a bridge out or if there's a construction project that will be done, that's when he makes his final push through. This is the route.
Yep.
And, all along there, we're seeing state patrol and DOT people and town people. So there's all kinds of officials that are part of that process as well. So once pre-ride is done, Matt's pretty darn close to sealing the deal on the exact route.
That's right. It's game on.
And then from there, another question that comes up is the GPS route, which I think you also briefly mentioned, but I'm assuming that's when Matt can put those final coordinates into ride with GPS.
That's right. Exactly right. So I think this year it ended up being maybe 2 weeks after the pre-ride, with a couple tweaks, very minor tweaks. But once we give you the route, we want to make sure it's the real route and that you won't have to deal with re-downloading routes or changing things. So yeah, we want to make sure it's the real one. So Matt gets it all put together, and then he'll add things like, if you go in and look on Ride with GPS from last year, you'll see that he's put all the bike shops and different first aid things and information that you might want as a cyclist. So he's really tricks them out.
Love it. Okay, 2 more questions.
Okay.
When is the expo, which I believe you may have mentioned it. I can't recall if you did.
The expo is always that Saturday when we kick off RAGBRAI. So it's the day before we start bicycling, but it's really the first day of RAGBRAI. We call it day 0, where you go. So it's always the Saturday in July before we start cycling. I can't say, I guess I could say what day.
And then what would you say is the very best booth to visit at the expo?
Yeah. First of all, it will be Saturday, July 19th in 2025.
Okay.
In an undisclosed location. And the number one best expo booth is the Just Go Bike podcast booth, where you will see yours truly and Kathy Murphy.
That's right. And in the past several years, which I believe we will continue to do, we actually give people the chance to get the mic and tell their story or tell where they're from or tell us how great we are.
Yeah, it's really cool. We met people from all over the country and different countries.
Yes.
So it's also kind of a nice place to sort of just hang out and meet people.
Yep.
So yeah. And then we have a booth every day thereafter at the smaller expos along the way.
Yep. Okay, final question. I think this one should be pretty easy for you, Andrea. Where can people go year-round to find out information about RAGBRAI?
Well, they can go to ragbrai.com. They can go to facebook.com/RAGBRAI. We also have an Instagram page. We also have a TikTok and an X, formerly known as Twitter page. Or you can listen to the Just Go Bike podcast.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's probably a gazillion more questions that we could throw out here. If you have any, please email us and we'll have it on a future podcast. But thanks again, Paul, for giving us the idea, and hopefully your team, Red, White, and Blue, will be a little bit more in tune to RAGBRAI next year.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the great episode, Murph. And let's go bike.
Let's go bike.
Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Bike podcast. Murph and AP will be back next week. In the meantime, check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you would like to contact Murph and AP with a comment about the podcast, or maybe you have a topic in mind, email them at justgobikepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, especially if you're a fan. Until next time,
Just go bike.
Theme song by Ryan Steer, logo by Suzanne Milosevic, produced by Kathy Murphy, social media by Andrea Parrott, intro by Pumpkin. Until next time, just go bike.